Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, Michigan, Colorado, Florida, New Hampshire, wherever it is that you're joining us, we just want to say welcome. And we're excited that you joined us on this journey. And so, again, at Ethos, we delve in deep into the Bible. We ask bigger questions of this text. We understand this was not written for 21st century people, right? This is not an American piece. This is not a Christian, as we know Christian today. It's not a Christian piece. This was a piece written for and by Jewish people. And so the question, of course, is who are Jewish people? What do they believe? Why is it written? All of that. What time is it written? Right? All of these kind of questions are so important to understand the text. And so we spend a lot of time researching, understanding words, phrases, looking at the interpretations over the past centuries, understanding the text fully. And so we're moving through this book, Genesis, right? The book of origins. And we understand, again, this book was not written as a history book, right? We understand 587 BC, Israel is taken captive by the largest empire of that time, Babylon. And as you are taken captive, like any other nation, any other tribe, the expectation is that you would assimilate. You would take on their values, their gods, their rituals. You would take on all of that. And Israel says, no, we are not going to assimilate. We serve one God, right? We have different values. We have different stories. And so what they did is they compiled all of the oral traditions, right? The wisdom stories, the messages from kings, all these different messages. They compile it all so that they do not assimilate. They hold true to who they are as Jewish people. They want the next generations to be Jewish, right? To be Hebrews. That's why they hold on to it. And so, again, this compilation, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Torah, right, is poetry, mythology, all of these different elements all combined, not to make a perfect history book of perfect dates, all this. That's not the point, never the intention. The intention was to hold together what Israel looks like. And so every time a Hebrew person would read this text, they actually saw themselves in every character, every story, because this is a story not about Abraham, it's about Israel. It's not a story about Adam, it's a story about Israel. It's not a story about Noah, it's a story about Israel. And this is the theme all throughout the Bible. They see themselves in the story, and there is a lesson to be learned. There's some deeper wisdom there that's going to help them grow and navigate the present reality they're in. And so today we continue with the story of Abram turned Abraham, right? Genesis chapter 17. And so we're going to go 17 verses 11 through 27, right? This is a lot of verses here. So we're going to move through this one again. There's some repeats of different concepts, but we're going to delve into one concept that was mentioned last week, but we're going to delve into it even deeper because there's something so beautiful and the connection to Jesus is so rich. I'm excited to share it today. But before we do, let me read through these verses with you now. And it's a bit of a mouthful, so buckle up. Here we go. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be as a sign of a covenant between me and between you. So again, remember, like 99 years old, right? 99 years old, you're going to have this done. Wowza, right? Again, there's something so much deeper going on. Let me continue reading. I'm already getting ahead of myself. And at the age of 8 days, every male shall be circumcised to you throughout your generations, one that is born in the house or one that is purchased with money for any foreigner who is not of your seed. Those born in the house of those purchased for money shall be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. An everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised male who will not circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, that soul will be cut off from its people. He has broken my covenant. So you have this, and then you have that extreme, right? And God said to Abraham, your wife Sarah, you shall not call her name Sarah, for Sarah is her name, right? So there's a shift in her name as well, another deeper point here. Verse 16, and I will bless her, and I will give you a son from her, and I will bless her, and she will become a mother of nations. Kings of nations will be from her. And Abraham fell on his face and rejoiced, and he said to himself, will a child be born of one who is 100 years of old? And will Sarah, who is 90 years old, give birth? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael will live before you. And God said, indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And regarding Ishmael, again, I love this. He doesn't forget Ishmael. Regarding Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. He will beget 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. So good, right? Verse 21, but my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. And so verse 22, and he finished speaking with him, and God went up from above Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house, and all those purchased with his money, every male of the people of Abraham's household, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin on that very day, as God had spoken with him. Ouch. Ouch, to be in that tribe at that point in time. Then Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised of the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old, which again, you see this tradition, 13, right? And when he was circumcised of the flesh of his foreskin. On that very day, Abraham was circumcised, and so was Ishmael, his son. And all the people of his household, those born in his house and those brought with money from foreigners, were circumcised with him. Whew. Mouthful. Here we go. Let's just delve in. Notice this. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be as a sign of a covenant between me and between you. And now I know what many of you are thinking. Is this literal? Did Abraham do this himself? Like there's a lot of, right? There's a lot going on here. I want you to understand something first and foremost. This is a symbol. There's something deep, deep, deep going on here. Something so much bigger than the question of, is this literally happening? Did the whole tribe there really all cut their own foreskins? This sounds terrible, right? There's something going on here. And so notice this. He is referencing circumcision. And if you are a Hebrew person, especially during this time era, circumcision had deep meaning. So circumcision, this is a ritual for them that shows one's commitment, right? So there's commitment and there's connection. So if you are a circumcised person, you are committed and you are deeply connected to the nation of Israel. You are an Israelite. If you are not circumcised, you're not an Israelite. Do you see it? Like this is an identifying marker, super important to that tribe. And we know historically, tribes have had identifying markers all throughout history, right? Whether it's tattoos on the face or earrings or whatever the thing was, right? Certain things they would wear, certain ways they would form military, whatever the identifying marker was, tribes always had these. For Israel, circumcision was one of these. And so there's even more, though, to this. So yes, identifying marker. But notice this, circumcision is also deeply connected. If you are a Jewish person, you get this. It's super deeply connected to the idea of the promise. So circumcision was a visual, a physical representation of this covenant between you and God, you and your people. So when you were circumcised, for them, it was this deeper idea that we are walking with the divine. And the divine has committed every step we take, committed this path to us, that if we follow this path, we will live life more abundantly, right? As an Israelite, it means we are abundant livers, right? Everywhere we go, we bring promise and life. And this was one of the visual, physical representations of this. And yeah, it's painful, but also understand this. The idea for them was it's painful. The journey is painful. To be an Israelite, we understand this, right? The Jewish nation has been through a lot. It's a painful journey, but it's also a promised blessed one. That was the idea that Israel understood. They saw themselves in the ritual. Notice what Rabbi Rashi says. He says, circumcision is the physical symbol of the Jewish person who's committed their life to Yahweh. They are a Hebrew. So when one is circumcised, they are Hebrew. When they are not, they're on the outside, right? They miss the pain, but they also miss the blessing, the promise. Isn't this good? Yeah, it's so heavy. It keeps going. And at the age of 8 days, every male shall be circumcised to you throughout your generation, one that is born in the house or one that is purchased with money from any foreigner who is not of your seed. So why the 8th day? Right? Why not the 7th day, right? That's a holy day. Or why not the 5th day or the 6th day? Why the 8th day? Well, here's something really fascinating to me. There's some interesting science to this. And I don't know if they knew this back then or not, but we know scientifically, biology, this tells us something fascinating about the 8th day. Notice this, I'll just read it to you. In June 2000, a new edition of the bestseller None of These Diseases by Dr. S.I. McMillan was released. McMillan notes enthusiastically that in the first days of life, the newborn faces a serious dearth of blood clotting substances. Whereas, now watch this, after the 8th day, the level of clotting material, I won't even pronounce it, in the blood reaches its lifetime average of 100%. However, just before the 8th day, the amount of blood clotting material increases rapidly until on the 8th day itself, it is 110% of the norm. Isn't that amazing? So when you cut, it actually is able to clot a lot better. Interesting. Coincidence? I don't know, right? Some people will argue that's just how God did it and he planned this and this and this. I have no idea. Or maybe the Israelites figured this out, right? They've done enough circumcisions to know. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's an interesting coincidence nonetheless. But there's also an interesting interpretation to the 8th day. Of course there is, right? Numbers always mean something if you're Jewish. So watch this. Why should circumcision be the sign of the covenant between the Jews and God? Circumcision represents the completion of the human being. According to Jewish tradition, Adam, right, the first man, was born without a foreskin. Only when he sinned did he create a barrier between himself and God, and at that point developed a foreskin. Interesting, again, interesting ideas and interpretations. The deeper idea here is, of course, this. The 8th day, the number 8, was this idea of full completion. 7 was supposed to be like the perfect number, the closest thing to infinity, right? The 8. The 8 was this idea, you are complete, right? You have this idea that when you have taken on the promise, now you become a Jew, right? You begin walking the path. You are in this inner circle, right? You're on the in. You're no longer outside. You're inside. And so then begins the journey, the number 8. It's beautiful, interesting. Probably some things you think, I don't know about that, and I'm with you, right? But I'm just sharing all of this with you to say the number 8 and the idea of circumcision on the 8th day, tons and tons of interesting research. I went down the rabbit hole for days just seeing so many interesting things about the 8th day and circumcision. A lot there. Here's the most interesting points I thought. So let's keep going. Verse 14. And an uncircumcised male who will not circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, that soul will be cut off from its people. He has broken my covenant. So what if you decide I don't want it, right? It says here, you are broken off from the promise. What do you do with that today? There's a big pushback to say kids should have a choice, right? There's big pushback over this. Do we still have to circumcise today? Is that really important? Are we literally, if this verse is real, are we today, centuries later, cut off from the promise of living life more abundantly? If you take the Bible very literally here, man, kind of looks like it, right? But again, there is something deeper going on, right? This is a physical sign for a tribal people of a commitment to their tribe. That's the idea. It's an identifying marker for who's in and who's out. That's the idea here. So if you're not circumcised in that tribe, then you're not Jewish, right? That's the idea here. But here's the beautiful point that comes up for me. When I hear this, all this talk about who's in, who's out, all of this could potentially cause a lot of pain. Am I right? Think about poor Ishmael, his mother, the outcast, right? This whole talk, who's in, who's out, marginalization, casting others out, painful. We see this so often. So much marginalization, so much removing of the other, right? And this is where I think about Jesus. And the message of Jesus is so powerful for the first century Jews who've heard this their whole life. If you do this, you're out. If you do this, you're out. If you eat this, you're not Jewish, right? So many rules, so many regulations, stacked upon regulation and regulation, years and years and years of it. Jesus steps in and he changes everything. And this is why I'm always so drawn to Jesus. So good. Jesus taught Judaism something really beautiful that I would argue has crossed over into people like you and me who are not Jewish, right? For a specific tribe of people, though, this who's in, who's out, Jesus says there's a better way to live. There's something so much bigger. Think about the parables he taught over and over again. Luke 14, 15 through 24. This idea, everyone's invited to the party, right? Everyone can come to the party. Everyone can celebrate. We as a Jewish nation, we've been waiting for the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus says, you know what? It's not just us that's going to experience it. And the Jewish people are like, hey, wait, what? We've been circumcised. We've been not eating pork. We've been doing the seventh day. We've been doing all these things. You're telling us everyone can do it who doesn't do these things? And Jesus says, yeah, everyone, even our enemies, can participate in the party too. They are invited in. What a shift, right? What a huge shift for a group of people who have been so caught up in the who's in, who's out, the identifying marker. Jesus says, the only identifying marker we need to worry about is if you're human. If you're human, you belong. So good. Think about this one. Jesus ate. Again, when you're a Hebrew during that ancient culture, Middle Eastern culture, when you sat down with someone and you ate a meal, you are essentially saying, I am connected to this person. We are one. And so you didn't eat with the tax collector, the sinner, the prostitute. If you valued your reputation, if you are a Jew, you don't eat with a Roman. They're the enemy. What does Jesus do? He purposely, intentionally sits down with them, eats with them, shares meals with them. He invites everyone in. Everyone, whether you're circumcised or not, whether you're eating bacon or not, whether you're worshiping on the seventh day or the first day, whatever it is, everyone's invited in. I'll eat with all of you. I am one with all of you. Think about Peter's dream, right? This movement of people who followed in the footsteps of Jesus. We call them Christians, right? This early movement of Jewish people who said, we're going to live out the teachings of Jesus. Notice this in Acts 10, it describes this dream that Peter has. And many people have kind of tried to take this as like, see, it's you can eat whatever foods you want. No, like go bigger. So much bigger. For a Jewish audience, they understood this. It was talking about people, not just foods that you eat, right? Hey, now I can eat bacon. We've always been able to eat bacon, right? You can eat bacon. Are you Jewish? You're not Jewish? Eat bacon if you want. That's not the point. There's something so much bigger here. The challenge for them was that as this dream happens, he notices that the idea here is nothing's unclean. And it's referring to the people. No one is unclean. Because for them, if you weren't Jewish, you were unclean, right? You were just another beggar. You were another sinner. The word sinner meant anyone that's not Jewish. That was the idea. You are the other. And so Peter's dream says, no, we're all clean. There's nothing unclean. Paul will reverse it, right? Paul's argument, he'll say, okay, if you want to say they're sinners, then you're sinners too, right? Paul flips it upside down. He says, fine, if you want to say they're sinners, then we're all sinners. How's that? We're all unclean, right? Peter says, no, we're all clean. Paul will say, no, we're all unclean. Choose your story. You know what I mean? I choose to say we're all human, right? We're all good. We're all bad. Whatever we're feeding, right? We're human. Let's be humankind, right? Let's be kind humans. Look at some of these verses. Romans 14:14. Paul, I am convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for that person it is unclean. Jesus' followers deeply believe this. Everyone's invited in. If that person's unclean, we're all unclean. If that person's clean, we're all clean. It's beautiful. There is no one outside of the circle anymore. We all belong. We all belong. There's space for all of us. Think about this, Galatians 3:8. There's neither Jew nor Gentile. This would get you killed, right? This would get you in trouble. But he says it. There's neither Jew nor Gentile. In this kingdom of heaven, these identifying markers don't matter. And it's so important to you to be Jewish. Well, guess what? Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. It's so important to you that you're Roman, that you're a Republican, that you're this or this or this. Those things don't matter. Are you human? Are you kind? Neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. What a beautiful message. We're all one. We all belong. With Jesus, the physical barrier between Jew and the rest of the world, that was torn. That's why that moment where the curtain is torn in two. The question, of course, is where is God? Where is life? And the answer is right there in the teachings and the life of Jesus. It's right there. Everyone is now able to see the kingdom of heaven, experience it because of the person and the teachings of Jesus. He ushers in a totally new reality. So good. And I would argue this, even here in Genesis 17, they're beginning to see it. Because notice this. This would be so earth-shattering for them, even at this time. Notice this. Isaac is blessed, right? Isaac's going to be blessed because he's coming from Sarah, right? The Hebrew. But notice this. So is Ishmael. You never blessed someone outside of your tribe. But Israel, even in this moment, they're getting it. They're moving forward, right? Isaac is blessed too. And in Genesis, they're beginning to understand this, right? They're captives in Babylon. And of course, here's the thing. Jewish people, we are blessed. We have this, but also, so are some of our neighbors, right? And they can be blessed too. Judaism is where life is, but there's also life outside of that. God also blesses others. We're all invited to the party. We're all invited in. Such a good message. And I would argue Jesus shows the fullness of that in the Gospels. And that's why there is such a powerful movement after Jesus, right? With Paul and Peter and so many others that carry out this message. It's such a beautiful one. Everyone is invited in. You want abundant life? It's right there. It's been there the whole time. I hope you enjoyed this. This was so good. So good. What do we do with it? Here's what I was thinking. How to accept everyone in the community. Sometimes churches are really bad with this. And sometimes we're really bad at this as individuals, right? So I started thinking of this. How do we invite everyone in? How do we experience this? How do we start moving more intentionally in this direction? One thought I had was this. Just be aware of your thoughts. First and foremost, watch your thoughts. I often think about things about others, like I'll judge them, right? I'll see them, I'll hear them speak. I'll begin to formulate these judgments, these kind of gross judgments without even realizing it sometimes. And so I am going to be paying attention to these things. When a knee-jerk reaction or judgment takes place, an assumption happens, I'm going to be trying really hard intentionally to just notice those things. watch my thoughts, begin pushing some of that non like judgmental, more accepting direction. I want to go there rather than make big assumptions when I'm with someone else. I want to watch, I want to be aware of my thoughts. Number two, I want to look for the positive. When I'm meeting new people, when I'm beginning to notice things, instead of focusing on why someone's different, what if instead we said, I'm going to focus on what's good about that person, right? The choices, actions they make that are bringing life. I'm going to focus on those things. And here's the thing: we may not always agree, right? I may not agree with some of the things they do, and that's okay too. But if I begin to focus more on the positive, I think we can build more and more bridges, and we'll find less and less people on the outskirts, and we'll find we're all really here in the middle. Um, Most of us, we have more in common than we don't. Yeah. And then last couple, avoid right or wrong dichotomies. I think it's very easy, very tempting to do this. We see the world in black and white, right? For us, we have our reality, the things and the arguments and the talking points. We have those down, and we assume everyone else does too. But the truth is, that's your perspective, that's your world, that's your story, right? But other people have other stories. Other people have other experiences. Other people have experienced or heard the world differently. And so we have to kind of keep that into account. It's sometimes not that it's right or wrong, but it's kind of how we choose to accept people, how we choose to know that like this is not a label of right or wrong. This is a person who has a different worldview than me. And that's just it. And then lastly, offer an invite in. I think many churches don't do a great job with this, or they'll just invite you to church, right? And come to church, and then you never see that person again. What if we invited people into our sphere of influence? What if we invited them home, right? What if we invited them to the coffee shop, meet, hang out with our kids, watch a soccer game, whatever the thing is, right? We invite people into our community, into our circle. We don't just invite them in to get another number, right? Hey, I got one more person into church. That's bull. That's garbage, right? That's not interesting. Invite people in for the sake of getting to know people, right? Bringing people into community. That's beautiful. That's intentional. And I think that's the direction Jesus wanted his people to head. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. This was so much fun for me. We're going to keep plugging through Genesis. And as we do, please consider donating. ethos-church.org/donate. Go there, partner with us every week if you can. Help us continue sharing these super important messages, especially right now. This one, I think, has such potential to really shift how we interact with people and get us focused again on Jesus. Such a beautiful message. If you want to do live sessions with us, please email us. Let us know times and places you want to meet. We'd love to get these conversations moving more and more live, real time with you. And as always, hit that subscribe button, share these YouTube videos, help us grow our YouTube channel. We hope you have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next week as we get into chapter 18. Take care, and we'll see you next week.